Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Talking about immigration in the last segment, how Cesar Chavez should not be a hero to advocates of amnesty. He fought even legal immigration from Mexican migrant farm workers because he knew what it would do to the wages of American workers. So he physically went down to the border. Don't want you coming across because you're going to take jobs away from the workers whose jobs I am trying to protect. And under his leadership, farm workers' wages went up 300%. And here's that story from Breitbart.com. Bob Goodlatte is out there trying to raise money from Silicon Valley supporters. Some of the donors are poised to fork over between 10 grand and 40 grand to spend the evening with Goodlatte. And they say they are demanding assurances that Goodlatte will detail what the House GOP schedule is for passing immigration legislation, read amnesty. Here's Ron Conway, venture capitalist and Silicon Valley donor. In this case, because there's been mixed messages from the Republicans, before I write my check, I want some assurances that Bob Goodlatte will be prepared to discuss immigration reform and what the timetable is for immigration reform. Read amnesty, because we're coming down the wire here with the midterm elections, and we need accountability. So in other words, Conway said, I know we're not going to get this done in the height of an election season because the American people don't want it. So we got to get some action right now. And I'm sitting here holding a check for 40 grand. Bob Goodlatte, you want this check for 40 grand, you got to give me amnesty. So, and the Republicans, to their shame, shame on them. Shame on the leadership of the Republican Party. Shame on them for being blackmailed like this and giving away to craven greed and covetousness. This is just idolatry. Scripture says that greed is a form of idolatry. Covetousness is a form of idolatry. Greed being a form of idolatry, is when you do something wrong, when you do something that you know is wrong just for financial gain. That's greed, it's covetousness, and it is idolatry. It's the worship of a false god. Now, I'll give you an example of how Republicans have gotten so far out in the weeds on this. This is Laura Ingraham talking with Renee Elmers, clip number 19. It's extended clip, and then we'll go to the phones. But listen to Laura Ingraham, how little patience she has with Renee Elmers, who on a lot of issues is a good lawmaker. I like where she stands on a lot of issues, but on immigration, she is totally, completely flat wrong. Why is she wrong? It's because she has sold her soul on immigration for campaign donations from rich people. This is crony capitalism on steroids. Let's listen to the exchange. Laura Ingraham, Representative Renee Elmers.
Why would Republicans give the Democrats cover? Because is it because of the Chamber of Commerce?
Laura, we're not going to be passing legislation this year. This is too big of an issue. We're the party of big ideas.
Well, big
Why
business.
Are you being
sound like
so
the party of big business.
Minded on this.
No, you sound like the party of big business, because the little guy is getting crushed by the open borders people.
It is the little guy that is being hurt by this, Laura. It's not the big guy. The big guy can cost shift and find their way around it. It's the little guy that we have to make sure. And what by your position on this, you are supporting de facto amnesty.
Another Chuck Schumer line. You realize La Raza wrote that line,
no, that's
right?
Renee you know what? Renee Elmers thinks for herself.
Well, why are you repeating La Raza's line? Why are you repeating? You think they're on your side?
I have no idea.
Where'd you hear that? Did you make that up?
That is my line, ma'am.
Oh, you wrote it?
That is not anyone else's.
Oh, okay.
Why are you are so locked in to anything positive that a Republican can have to do for your job security that you will look at this issue and fight it without even looking at the facts? I'd love for you to get some of my farmers on the air with you.
If you're a farmer, here's my deal. If you're a farmer and can't make a living by following our laws right now, then you shouldn't be in business. If you're an American landscaping company and you can't pay a decent living wage and hire people, then move aside, because I know a lot of landscapers who actually have gone out of business because illegal immigrants have taken good people's good paying jobs from them. So yes, if you can't operate in a free market economy and respect sovereignty, the rule of law, and American immigration law, you're right, Congressman.
Laura,
woman, I don't think you should be in business today.
The laws that dictate this are unenforceable for many and very cumbersome and expensive for many to have to deal with.
You realize your farmer said Americans are lazy. lazy. You realize your people at that meeting said Americans are lazy. Do you agree with those people who showed up at your meeting, the transcript of which I have read on this show? They're lazy.
My North Carolina farmers who say that this is an issue that needs to be reformed. I'm not going to take an ignorant position as you have.
All right, so there's Renee Elmer saying to Laura Ingraham, talking about the rule of law, talking about American jobs for American workers, and she says you're ignorant and small-minded, and this is a Republican. Why would a Republican talk like this? Ladies and gentlemen, it's because she has sold her soul on immigration for money. This is a bargain with the devil. The Republican leadership, the John Boehners, the Paul Ryans, the Renee Elmers, I'm not saying they've done this on other issues, so I want to be very clear on that. I'm just talking here about immigration. On immigration, they have made a Faustian bargain with the devil, selling out our culture, selling out our border security, selling out our national sovereignty, selling out American workers who are getting aced out of jobs by these illegals that have no right even to live in this country, and they've sold their souls to the devil for a mess of pottage on the issue of immigration. All right, let's go back to the phones, get off my soapbox here, and let's go to Mac in Albany, Georgia. Mac, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, thank you, Brian. I was just thinking about Obama. How do you get him out of there? Well, without for the next 4 years, but by the time he leaves, Putin will be took over. If he moves in over there to, across from us, and I could tell you a lot. Speak on a lot of things, but the Republican and Democrat parties to me are gone. I think an independent would win if it were run. Brian, have a good weekend.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Mac. I appreciate that. And, the question from what we do about Obama until 2016, well, there's not a whole lot we can do other than get conservatives in the Senate in November. That's something we can do. We can get conservatives in the United States Senate in September. Rob, and speaking of that, let's grab clip number, it's the Thad Cochran clip number 8. Let's throw that in there real quick while we're talking about the changes that need to be made in Washington. Here is Thad Cochran. He's a senator from my home state. Thad Cochran is a fine individual. I have no reservations about his character. I'm sure he's a very nice man. I'm sure he's a great husband, a great father, great grandfather. This is not about that. This is about the political landscape in America and whether Thad Cochran is a guy that conservatives ought to want representing them in D.C. Now, remember, he got into big trouble about a month ago when he was asked about the Tea Party. He says, I don't know anything about the Tea Party, never heard of the Tea Party. And he got a lot of blowback on that. And you would think that a seasoned politician who wants to go back to D.C. would do something about that. He would sort of remedy this lacuna in his understanding of conservative grassroots Americans, and apparently he hasn't done it. Here's what he had to say yesterday when he was asked about the Tea Party.
I said I didn't know much about the Tea Party, and I didn't. I read newspaper articles about him, and that's about all I knew. It's kind of like Will Rogers. All he said he knew was what was in the papers.
So Thad Cochran said didn't know anything about the Tea Party, and I still don't. Just know a little bit about what I read in the papers. Now, he's being challenged by a Tea Party conservative by the name of Chris McDaniel, who is a genuine bona fide conservative. I mean, it is in Chris McDaniel's DNA to stand for conservative values. So this is not an endorsement for Chris McDaniel. Don't misunderstand me. We don't do that here. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that in this race, conservatives have a clear choice between a guy, Thad Cochran, who doesn't even know about the Tea Party, and a Chris McDaniel, who is a Tea Party champion and will champion conservative values. All right, let's take another phone call. Let's go to Chris in Mississippi. Chris, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian, it's good to hear your voice. I'm glad that you're still on the air. I'm surprised they haven't had a chance to try and knock all conservatives off the air as they've been trying to do.
Well, I'm sure they'll get around to it, and some of that IRS stuff, those IRS C4 regulations, that was targeted right at organizations like the American Family Association to take us out of circulation because they want to criminalize and punish dissent. All right, go ahead.
I know. God help us all. But I'll tell you right now, this whole amnesty bit, it affects me personally. I made the decision, me and my wife did, to pull our son out of the school where we're at here because the teachers could not only not help him, but the other kids, because the majority of the kids didn't even speak English right here in Mississippi.
Yeah.
It's becoming a full Hispanic school, and it's like, okay, wait a minute. I thought we spoke English here in America. That's the first thing that's affecting us.
Yeah.
The second thing is I cannot get a job in what I do because they flat out said you don't speak Spanish. The whole entire industry, insulation industry, has been taken over, and unless you speak Spanish, unless you are illegal, period.
Wow. So in other words, they
won't even talk to you.
So what you're saying is they have so many employees that are illegal aliens and only speak Spanish, and they're employing them, that unless somebody can communicate with them in Spanish, they can't hire them.
That's right. And a lot of our contract companies, the only way, it's a very unsafe environment sometimes where we're at. You deal with high-pressure steam lines. You deal with forces of nature that can literally tear you apart. And the only way to tell these guys, hey, this is a problem, you need to come over here, is in English. It states right there in the contract safety rules. You have to be able to communicate in English. And yet, here they are, hiring these guys for half of what I was making.
Wow.
I'm unemployed because of these people.
Yeah. Well, and Chris, what you're talking about is exactly the problem here. This is why I believe we just, we don't need immigration reform. We need immigration enforcement. We need to lock down our borders to illegal immigrants, because Chris is a case in point. This guy's a hardworking American guy. Now he cannot find a job because he's underbid by people who do not even have the legal right to be in this country, and he's being aced out because he doesn't speak Spanish when even the rules at the workplace require instructions in certain situations to be given in English. These workers can't even understand him. And here's a story out of Hempstead, Texas. The Hempstead School Board won't renew the contract of a principal who instructed her students not to speak Spanish. She wanted them to learn English because that's how you succeed. She's been fired. Focal Point AFR Talk.